The New York Knicks finally broke their 53-year title drought, proudly bringing the Larry O'Brien Trophy back home to Madison Square Garden, where it honestly should have been sitting a very long time ago. By any normal metric, this is a time for total, unfiltered celebration, and let there be no doubt, it is exactly that. There is probably still confetti stuck in someone's hair somewhere in Manhattan, but once you strip away the parade footage and that wild championship energy for just a second, a much deeper strategic dilemma starts to emerge beneath the gold and blue. A major question is quietly forming. The Knicks have been strangely quiet this offseason, their very first as defending champions. And look, keeping a title-winning squad together makes a lot of sense on paper. Nobody is suggesting they tear the whole thing down, but basketball history is packed with warning signs about teams that get too comfortable, teams that just assume the exact formula that won them the ring will automatically put them right back on top. Now, before we really look at that danger, a quick favor. Tap that like button right now if you appreciate this kind of no-nonsense analysis. It honestly takes just a single second on your end, but it is the absolute best way to help get this video in front of other Knicks fans who really need to see it. Tap it now, seriously, and let us keep moving. The most recent warning sign comes straight out of Oklahoma City. The Thunder entered the 2025 to 2026 season boasting arguably the deepest, most sustainable roster in the entire Western Conference. This was a squad built on elite player development with enough deep roster talent that they were supposed to withstand almost any blow. And yet, they completely failed to run it back. The number one issue was health. All-NBA wing Jalen Williams was absolutely derailed by tough injuries all season long. A torn wrist ligament that ended up requiring off-season surgery held him to a mere 33 regular season appearances, and then a series of lingering hamstring strains ruined massive parts of his playoff run as well, keeping him to just a few games, across 3 full rounds. Oklahoma City desperately tried to cover up that gap with rotation adjustments, leaning heavily on guys like Jared McCain for heavy minutes. But it just was not enough. San Antonio fully capitalized during a brutal 7-game Western Conference Finals battle, knocking the defending champions out before the Thunder ever got back the dominant version of Jalen Williams that had made them so terrifying in the first place. But here is the real takeaway. The lesson is not simply that bad luck happens and injuries are part of basketball. No one can ever forecast exactly when a player's hamstring or wrist is going to give out. What truly separates good franchises from great ones is how much insurance they build into their roster before disaster strikes. Once Williams went down, the Thunder simply lacked enough established, high-level depth behind him to weather that storm, without it completely destroying their shot at winning back-to-back titles. If you find this parallel helpful, connecting the exact dots between what went down in Oklahoma City and what might happen in New York, leave a comment below telling me which squad you think is more vulnerable this season, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss our next analysis. Now, let us bring that harsh lesson home to New York, because the Knicks bench and rotation depth has been a well-known weakness for over a year now, and this offseason did nothing to fix it. Honestly, they might have made things worse. Their starting unit is genuinely elite. Jalen Brunson, McCall Bridges, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, and Karl Anthony Towns make up one of the most terrifying starting lineups in the entire Eastern Conference, without a doubt. But beyond that core, the front office is counting on a bench of decent role players who can merely give you a solid stretch here and there. And being good in small stretches is a completely different beast than staying reliable when the postseason games actually matter. With basically every single competitor in the Eastern Conference aggressively working to close the gap this summer, their margin for error is shrinking fast. Team owner James Dolan has been incredibly vocal and firm about staying completely under the second luxury tax apron. That strict financial ceiling heavily restricts exactly how a franchise can construct and preserve its roster depth. Word is the front office pushed back on that stance behind closed doors, but Dolan firmly held his ground, and the direct result of that was a remarkably quiet, almost passive summer, where New York ultimately lost longtime backup center Mitchell Robinson, who was the longest tenured player on the squad, and a major piece who played a truly vital role in their championship run, losing him to the Boston Celtics on a 3-year contract valued at roughly $47.4 million, there is a player option built into year 3. To fill his spot, the Knicks brought in veteran big man Andre Drummond. He signed a 1-year minimum deal worth $3.9 million. But look, Drummond is not nothing. He is a two-time All-Star who remains an incredibly strong rebounder on a per-minute basis. Plus, he brings some serious veteran experience to that locker room. But let us not sugarcoat this. Swapping a homegrown, defensively elite rim protector who served as a rotation anchor for a 32-year-old playing on a minimum contract is a massive step backward when it comes to proven depth at the center position. Robinson gave Mike Brown real, trustworthy options off the bench. Drummond at this point in his career is simply a different player, asked to fill a completely different role. The Knicks basically traded reliable, championship-tested production for some extra financial flexibility. Make no mistake, that is a massive gamble, not just some quiet lateral move. If you have opinions on whether Drummond can truly replicate what Robinson brought to this squad, drop them in the comments below. I read every single one of them, and your feedback directly shapes my future videos. Beyond that, the front office is placing a ton of expectations on a handful of unproven young prospects. We are talking about projects like Mohamed Diawara, Jack Kyle, and other Kai Soto-style prospects, along with second-round picks expected to deliver actual rotation-caliber minutes this season. These kids are talented, without a doubt, and Mike Brown has a proven track record of developing young talent. But counting on several unproven prospects to play major rotational roles for a squad that is supposed to be defending an NBA title, well, that is not a plan. That is just hope disguised as a strategy. Here is the thing that makes this incredibly urgent right now. The Knicks are no longer the hunters. They are the hunted. Every single Eastern Conference rival spent this offseason specifically building rosters to take New York down. Cleveland, Philadelphia, Miami, and Toronto have all loaded up and made major moves to improve. Meanwhile, New York has essentially stood still while watching a critical piece of their rotation walk away. That gap should set off alarm bells. Luckily, they still have time to course correct. The February trade deadline in 2027 gives Leon Rose and this front office a perfect window to make a major roster move if the regular season exposes these fatal holes. If the Dolan family stance on the second apron softens even a little, or if a deal materializes that aligns with their financial framework without gutting the roster, the Knicks can still acquire that missing depth without blowing up their core. Here is the catch: waiting until February is a massive risk on its own. Rosters can easily fall into terrible habits over a grueling 82-game schedule, and the chemistry built during the grind of the regular season is everything once the playoffs begin. Oklahoma City learned this the hard way. Injuries and complacency do not mix. New York would be incredibly smart to get out ahead of this bench issue instead of reacting in panic. Because here is a universal truth: in the NBA, defending a championship is almost always much tougher than winning that very first title. History favors teams that stay hungry and paranoid, not those expecting last year's blueprint to run on autopilot. Hit that like button if you agree that New York needs to make a move before the deadline, rather than just waiting around. Look, the Knicks are currently NBA champions. That history is written in stone. The question now is whether they can build something lasting beyond one championship run, a legitimate dynasty. And according to analysts studying the East closely, that final answer might hinge on a single massive contract negotiation, the Karl Anthony Towns extension. Here is precisely how the board is set. Karl Anthony Towns is scheduled to make around $57 million this year. He also controls a massive player option, valued at roughly $61 to $62 million, for the 2027 to 2028 season, meaning he possesses the power to just walk away as an unrestricted free agent. For a historic franchise that only recently broke a 53-year title drought, letting a superstar like Karl Anthony Towns hit the open market would be a massive and entirely avoidable disaster. Locking him down with a long-term extension this summer would basically guarantee keeping this championship core together for at least 2, and possibly even more full seasons. And that is exactly why the timing is so critical. Almost the entire starting 5 is already locked down. Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, and OG Anunoby are all fully signed through the 2027 to 28 season. Josh Hart has a team option that covers that exact same timeline. Towns is quite literally the only piece of this championship-winning lineup who is not under team control after next season. That makes sorting out his deal the most high-stakes piece of unfinished business on Leon Rose's desk right now. It is bigger than any trade, rumor, or low-cost veteran signing. Analysts who have studied the competitive landscape in the East point out that most of New York's main rivals are eventually going to get wrecked by old age, expensive payrolls, or both. Now, the Knicks do face some of those same pressures, but they have one massive advantage. They can totally neutralize the money issue with a Towns extension. Plus, aging is much less of an issue here, given that their core is right in that 29 to 31 sweet spot instead of trailing off. Just look around the conference. The massive red flags practically scream at you. Jason Tatum is still working to recover from a serious Achilles surgery, leaving major questions about his durability over the long haul. Donovan Mitchell hits age 30 right before the 2027 season begins, while Cleveland's other star guard, James Harden, is already 36. Talk about a rapidly closing window for a team to win a title. Miami is relying on Giannis Antetokounmpo, but he is carrying some serious calf issues over from his time in Milwaukee. Philadelphia is relying on a 42-year-old LeBron James, and Toronto could become a serious threat if that rumored Kawhi Leonard trade actually happens, but Leonard's extensive history of injuries, years of load management, and soft tissue issues are impossible to ignore, and he will be 35 when next season gets underway. Basically, while the Eastern Conference is packed with high-end talent, almost every single contender has a clear expiration date stamped on them. The Knicks, on the other hand, look like a squad built to sustain a deep championship run for years to come, assuming they handle this critical decision with Towns the right way. And make no mistake, Towns has earned every ounce of leverage he holds. His incredible two-way impact during this championship run, dominating on both ends in the paint and out on the perimeter, completely justified why the front office pulled the trigger on that blockbuster trade. Look at his matchup in the finals. Spurs superstar Victor Wembanyama recently took a step-down maximum contract to help San Antonio keep their financial flexibility. That decision could easily become a major talking point in Towns' own negotiations, especially with Jalen Brunson's famous history of taking less money to keep a winning squad together. And the Knicks front office has certainly not been quiet about reminding guys that the huge New York stage, the endorsements, the media exposure, and the brand power are things you simply cannot find in almost any other NBA city. That is a highly persuasive business case for taking a slight pay cut. We have seen it work in New York before. But let us be completely honest about the major hurdle here, because we have to look at both sides. Owner James Dolan's strict refusal to cross that second tax apron is precisely why they lost Mitchell Robinson this summer, and that lands Towns in a very awkward position. Taking a discount would basically mean he is funding ownership's personal luxury tax choices. That is honestly a massive ask. Towns has truly earned every single dollar he gets, and nobody has any right to demand he leave money on the table just to fix budget issues created way above his pay grade. But if the two camps can agree on a number that offers Towns security while protecting the team's long-term payroll, the groundwork for an absolute dynasty in New York is right there, waiting to be laid down. This core is proven, and the coaching staff knows exactly how to develop talent. There is incredible momentum behind this franchise, and Madison Square Garden has not been this loud in decades. New York's massive market power alone gives this front office a level of leverage that small market teams simply cannot replicate. Players naturally want to play in this city when the franchise is winning. And right now, the Knicks are the true gold standard of the entire conference. Just one signature on a new extension could lock all of it into place. If you think the Knicks should just pay the man now and worry about that salary apron later, let me know down in the comments. And if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and subscribe so you catch the moment that deal actually gets announced. Now, let's look at the other major loose thread heading into training camp, because the Knicks still absolutely need to answer one last roster question before the regular season tips off. Who exactly is their third center? Karl Anthony Towns obviously anchors the front court, and Andre Drummond is locked in on that veteran minimum deal as the primary backup. But New York still needs at least one more serviceable big man to fully round out the depth chart. And the free agent market at that position has thinned out incredibly fast, with almost all of the attractive names already off the board and trade conversations reportedly very quiet. So, the front office appears to be leaning toward a completely different, much more resourceful approach. Namely, bringing veteran centers into training camp on non-guaranteed tryout deals and letting them compete directly for that final open roster spot. It's not glamorous. It's certainly not the flashy move fans want to see after a championship parade, but it is a highly practical solution for a team operating under real financial constraints. courtesy of Dolan's firm insistence on staying safely below that second apron. 4 distinct names have emerged as legitimate candidates worth watching, guys who have mostly fallen off the mainstream radar in recent years, but still possess the physical tools, along with the necessary NBA-level experience to potentially contribute in a limited role for this title defense. Ben Simmons is the most recognizable name here and easily the most complicated. The former #1 overall pick from 2016 is 30 years old now and hasn't played meaningful NBA minutes in well over a year. Interestingly, the Knicks were actually quite interested in signing him just last summer. Insider reports indicated they actually offered him a guaranteed contract, but the Simmons camp eventually walked away after he showed very little real interest in pursuing that deal. Since that point, he has spent time away from the league entirely, reportedly leaning heavily into competitive fishing of all things, though he has recently signaled in interviews that he is open to a return. During his last brief NBA stint with the Clippers, Simmons functioned primarily as a backup center, a role his 6'10" frame and sharp passing instincts theoretically fit quite well. New York's veteran-heavy locker room could be exactly the kind of low-pressure environment for a total career reset, but the risk here is obvious. He has been away from competitive basketball for a very long stretch, and his history of passing on legitimate opportunities is incredibly well documented by now. Now, Moses Brown brings a completely different profile to the table. He's 26, a proud New York native who starred at Archbishop Molloy High School in Queens, and he actually has some very real history with this organization. He spent significant time with the Knicks G League affiliate, and even earned all G League recognition during the 2024-25 season. At 7'2" with a massive 7'4" wingspan, Brown has exactly the kind of physical profile that teams dream about on paper. Just last season, he played for Denver's G League affiliate in Grand Rapids, putting up highly impressive per-game numbers across 39 appearances. He has bounced around the league since going undrafted out of UCLA in 2019, cycling through various stints with Portland, Oklahoma City, Dallas, Cleveland, the Clippers, Brooklyn, and Indiana. The concerns are very real, as his defensive reads and pick-and-roll coverage have been highly inconsistent, and he has simply never carved out a permanent NBA role anywhere. But he is still young enough that further development is genuinely plausible, and the organizational familiarity with this Knicks system certainly counts for something real here. James Wiseman offers perhaps the highest long-term upside of the entire group. Remember, he was the second overall pick back in the 2020 draft, selected just one spot ahead, just behind Anthony Edwards, showing exactly how high the expectations once were for him. Since that night, his career has been repeatedly derailed by devastating injuries. Most notably, a torn Achilles during his Indiana Pacers debut cut his year short after only a couple of games. Throughout his career, even in a small sample of NBA action, Wiseman has shown he can score efficiently when healthy, shooting well over 50% for his career. His best long stretch came with Detroit a few seasons back, where he showed off real two-way potential at center. At nearly 6'11" with great athleticism, his ceiling remains tantalizing on paper. He has reportedly been getting some runs in Pro-Am leagues lately, which is usually a clear sign that a player is grinding to get back into true game shape. If the developmental touch Mike Brown used on Karl Anthony Towns transfers even partially to Wiseman, extending a training camp invitation could pay off big time, especially with one final roster spot still open for grabs. To stay completely locked in as these 3 storylines unfold, make sure you are subscribed. Leave a comment letting us know which of these 4 center candidates you would genuinely want to see wearing a Knicks jersey, and I will catch you in the next one.